Captain Vex 9 of the Kalahari Defense Fleet couldn't believe what his optical sensors were registering. A human, one single, ridiculous human, was walking directly toward their front lines carrying what appeared to be, well, this was going to sound absolutely insane in his report. Communications Officer Zara, please confirm my readings. Vex 9 clicked through his mandibles, his 4 eyes blinking in rapid succession. That human soldier is carrying Shadowclaw cubs, correct? Zara's scales shifted from blue to a concerned purple. Sir, that's exactly what I'm seeing. 2 Shadowclaw cubs, approximately 6 standard cycles old, strapped to the human's combat vest. Now, for those unfamiliar with Shadowclaws, imagine the most terrifying apex predator from your worst nightmares, multiply its deadliness by 7, give it the ability to phase through solid matter, and then make it twice as angry. These weren't pets. These weren't mascots. These were living weapons that had been decimating both human and Kalahari forces for the past 3 war cycles. Sir. Tactical Specialist Myra's voice crackled through the communicator, her tone pitched higher than usual. The human is broadcasting on all frequencies. The voice that filled their command center was distinctly human, rough, gravelly, and completely unhinged. Attention all Kalahari forces. This is Lieutenant Jake Morrison of Earth's 3rd Colonial Marines. I'm coming through your lines whether you like it or not, and I've got some very hungry babies with me. Vex 9's secondary brain processed this information while his primary brain struggled with the sheer impossibility of the situation. Mira, run a tactical analysis. How exactly does one human expect to breach our defensive positions with 2 infant predators? Sir, I honestly have no computational framework for this scenario. The human continued broadcasting, and there was something almost cheerful in his voice that made Vex 9's exoskeleton crawl. Now, I know what you're all thinking. Oh no, the crazy human has baby Shadowclaws. But here's the thing, folks, these little ones haven't eaten in about 6 hours, and they're getting really, really cranky. As if summoned by his words, a bone-chilling shriek echoed across the battlefield. Then another. The cubs were indeed making their displeasure known. By the 7 moons, whispered communications specialist Thane, his usually steady voice trembling. Is he actually using them as weapons? The human was now close enough that they could see him clearly through their scopes. Jake Morrison, apparently that was his name, looked exactly like what Central Command had warned them about humans, completely unpredictable and utterly insane. He had sandy brown hair sticking out from under his combat helmet, a grin that suggested he was enjoying this way too much, and 2 very agitated Shadowclaw cubs strapped to his chest like some sort of terrifying baby carrier. Target is within weapons range, reported Gunner Crix, his 3 arms hovering over the firing controls. Orders, sir? Vex 9 hesitated. Military protocol was clear, eliminate all threats. But this defied all logic. Hold fire. I need to understand what we're dealing with. The human's next transmission nearly made Vex 9 fall off his command perch. Oh, and just so you know, these little guys recognize Kalahari biosignatures as their primary prey species. Mama Shadowclaw made sure of that before she, well, let's just say she won't be picking them up from daycare. A cold silence fell over the command center. Every Kalahari present understood the implications. Shadowclaws were genetically programmed hunters. If these cubs had been raised to hunt Kalahari, sir. Zura's voice cracked with panic. Long-range sensors are detecting movement in the human's wake. It's a full Shadowclaw pack. Vex 9 spun his command chair around so fast he nearly triggered the artificial gravity compensators. How many? 12 adults, sir. They're tracking the cubs' pheromone trail. The human's laughter echoed across the battlefield like the sound of impending doom mixed with genuine amusement. Did I forget to mention? These babies have been calling for their extended family for the past hour. Turns out, Shadowclaws have excellent hearing and really strong family bonds. Who knew? This was it. This was how Vex 9's military career would end. Not in some glorious battle against worthy opponents, but because one human had figured out how to weaponize infant predators and turn them into a living, breathing tactical nightmare. Sir, what are your orders? Mira asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer. Vex 9 looked at his tactical display, where red dots representing the approaching Shadowclaw pack were moving at speeds that made his combat computer emit worried beeping sounds. Then he looked at the single human, still advancing steadily toward their positions with 2 very vocal cubs announcing their presence to every predator within 50 kilometers. Prepare for full retreat, he said finally. And somebody get me a direct line to High Command. They're going to want to hear about this. The human's voice came through one last time, and there was something almost apologetic in his tone. Sorry about this, folks, but war is war. These little ones need to find their family, and well, your base camp just happens to be in the way. As the first bone-shaking roar of an adult Shadowclaw echoed from the nearby forest, Vex 9 realized that humans hadn't just changed the rules of warfare. They had thrown the entire rulebook into a black hole and danced on its gravitational event horizon. 3 hours later, Admiral Corks Prime was staring at the most ridiculous tactical report in Kalhari military history while trying not to laugh and cry simultaneously. "Let me understand this correctly," the Admiral said, his voice dripping with the kind of disbelief reserved for truly spectacular disasters. "One human soldier caused the complete evacuation of Forward Base Epsilon by carrying baby predators like some sort of demented nanny?" Captain Vex 9's image flickered on the holographic display, his usually pristine uniform now covered in what looked suspiciously like scorch marks. "Sir, with all due respect, you had to be there." "The psychological warfare implications alone? Psychological warfare?" Admiral Corks Prime's tentacles writhed with barely contained frustration. "Captain, we've been fighting humans for 6 standard cycles. They've thrown everything at us: plasma bombs, quantum torpedoes, ships that shouldn't technically be able to fly. But babysitting duty? That's your excuse for abandoning a strategic position?" What the Admiral didn't know, what nobody in Kalhari High Command could possibly understand, was exactly how Lieutenant Jake Morrison had turned childcare into the most effective military strategy in galactic history. Back on the battlefield, Jake was having the time of his life. The 2 Shadowclaw cubs, now thoroughly excited by all the chaos, were making those adorable little chirping sounds that every Kalhari soldier knew meant incoming death from multiple directions. "There we go, little ones," Jake cooed, adjusting the specialized harness he'd rigged up. "Uncle Jake's got you safe and sound while we go visit the nice alien folks who've been shooting at your new human friends." The cubs responded with enthusiastic squeaks that roughly translated to food. "Hunt. Kill everything that smells wrong." In Shadowclaw. Jake's communication device crackled to life. "Morrison, this is Command. What's your status?" "Oh, just taking the kids for a walk," Jake replied cheerfully, stepping over the abandoned Kalhari defensive barriers. Turns out, when you've got hungry babies calling for mama, everything else becomes surprisingly simple. Behind him, the sounds of a Shadowclaw pack reunion were creating the kind of audio nightmare that would make horror movie directors weep with envy. 12 adult Shadowclaws had arrived to collect their wayward cubs, and they were not particularly happy about finding them in a war zone. "Morrison, are you insane?" Command's voice rose several octaves. "You're supposed to be conducting reconnaissance, not running a daycare center." "Reconnaissance accomplished," Jake announced proudly. "The Kalhari have completely abandoned this sector. Also, I've learned that Shadowclaw cubs make excellent conversation starters. Very social creatures, really." What Jake didn't mention, because honestly, it would have ruined the surprise, was that he'd spent the last 2 months studying Shadowclaw behavior patterns instead of following standard military protocol. While his fellow Marines were cleaning weapons and complaining about ration packs, Jake had been learning predator parenting techniques. The breakthrough had come when he'd realized that Shadowclaws weren't just mindless killing machines. They were mindless killing machines with very strong family values and a tendency to adopt anything that helped care for their young. "Sir," came a panicked transmission from the retreating Kalhari forces. "The human he's talking to the Shadowclaws." And indeed he was. Jake had picked up enough of their hunting language to manage basic communication. Mostly it involved pointing at things and making sounds that meant friend, food, or please don't eat me, I'm helping your children. "Listen up, beautiful predator friends," Jake addressed the pack in his heavily accented attempt at Shadowclaw. "Your babies are safe. The metal smell aliens ran away. We're all friends here." The largest Shadowclaw, presumably the pack leader, tilted its massive head and made a sound that could charitably be described as curious rather than immediately murderous. Admiral Corks Prime was receiving real-time updates that were making his head tentacles twitch uncontrollably. "He's negotiating with them?" "Sir, it appears the human has established some sort of diplomatic relationship with the pack," reported Captain Vex 9, who was watching the situation unfold from a very safe distance. "They're not attacking him." "Of course they're not attacking him," the Admiral exploded. "He's carrying their cubs. Even we know Shadowclaws don't harm those who protect their young." There was a long pause before Vex 9 responded. "Sir, did we know that before today?" Another long pause. "No, Captain. No, we did not." Back in the abandoned base, Jake was having what could only be described as the galaxy's strangest tea party. He'd found some Kalhari ration packs, which the Shadowclaws found absolutely fascinating. Not edible, mind you, but definitely worth investigating. "You know what the best part about this whole situation is?" Jake asked his new predator friends while the cubs played with his helmet. "Nobody's shooting at anybody right now. That's what I call progress." His communication device buzzed with an incoming message from Kalhari High Command. Jake almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of him. Human soldier, came the formal, slightly defeated voice of Admiral Corks Prime. We wish to discuss terms. Jake grinned, scratching one of the cubs behind what might generously be called ears. I'm listening, Admiral. But fair warning, I've got some very opinionated babysitting assistants here, and they've got some thoughts about how this war's been going. And that's how Lieutenant Jake Morrison became the first human in galactic history to negotiate a ceasefire while bottle-feeding apex predators and teaching them to play fetch with discarded plasma grenades. Some wars end with grand battles and dramatic speeches. Others end when someone realizes that sometimes the most effective weapon isn't a gun at all, it's a really good daycare program.